Today, we are tearing into Phil Knight's incredible memoir, Shoe Dog. Now, this is not just the story of a global brand. It is a raw, brutally honest look at the chaotic, messy, and ultimately triumphant journey of turning a crazy idea into a cultural icon. So let's just dive right in. This right here, this was the mantra Phil Knight gave himself back in 1962. And honestly, it is the beating heart of this entire story. It's all about that relentless, often terrifying, but absolutely exhilarating act of just not stopping. So let's rewind the clock. It's 1962. A 24-year-old Phil Knight is fresh out of Stanford Business School. He's living back at home with his parents, and he feels completely, utterly lost. He knows he wants his life to be more than just a job, but he has absolutely no clue what that even means. All he has is this thing he calls his crazy idea. And this was it. This was the big question from his final paper at Stanford. You have to remember, at a time when German companies completely dominated the athletic shoe industry, the idea of importing shoes from post-war Japan, well, nobody was taking that seriously, at all. And you really got to understand the landscape Knight was staring down. You had the old guard, Adidas and Puma. These were German giants that absolutely ruled the market. Meanwhile, Japan, it was still seen as this risky post-war manufacturer. But Knight, he saw what literally nobody else did, this untapped goldmine of high-quality Japanese manufacturing at a much, much lower cost. He saw an opening. So what does he do? He gets a $50 loan from his father and sets off on a trip around the world, totally determined to make this crazy idea a reality. And his very first stop? Japan. Over in Japan, he somehow manages to score a meeting with Onitsuka, the makers of Tiger running shoes. When they ask him what company he's with, he just panics and blurts out the first name that pops into his head, Blue Ribbon Sports. He's got no company, no office, nothing. It is a complete and total bluff. And, you won't believe it, it actually works. He walks out with the US distribution rights. And when I say humble beginnings, I mean humble. When that first shipment of Tiger shoes finally showed up in 1964, there was no fancy storefront. It was just Knight and his old track coach, Bill Bowerman, selling them one pair at a time straight from the trunk of a Plymouth Valiant at local track meets. This was it. This was the company.
So for years, Blue Ribbon starts to grow, slowly but surely, building this really loyal following. But just as they were finally hitting their stride, their entire world was about to be pulled right out from under them.
Yeah, the betrayal was devastating. Knight finds out that Onitsuka is secretly looking for a bigger U.S. distributor. They're planning to break their contract and just cut Blue Ribbon out of the picture completely. This left them with a truly impossible choice: give up and die, or build something brand new from scratch and do it like yesterday.
So in this frantic, panicked rush, they had to invent an entire brand. The name Nike, after the Greek goddess of victory, literally came to an employee in a dream. And for the logo, Knight went to a graphic design student at Portland State, a woman named Carolyn Davidson, and offered her $2 an hour. She billed him for 17 and a half hours for a grand total of $35, and one of her sketches was this simple, checkmark-like design.
At first, Knight wasn't even sold on the logo, but his team was. And when one of his colleagues asked what the hell a swoosh was even supposed to be, that was the spontaneous, perfect answer. It just captured everything: the motion, the speed, the raw competitive spirit they were trying to build. And just like that, the brand was born.
Now, of course, a company is nothing without its people. And the early Nike team, well, let's just say they were unconventional, to put it mildly. Knight affectionately called them his butt faces.
And these butt-face retreats, man, they were the stuff of legend. This wasn't some boring corporate offsite. We're talking all out, no-holds-barred, shouting matches, arguments, and huge laughs where they'd solve the company's biggest problems. It was where this band of misfits truly became a family. And what a team it was. I mean, none of them fit the corporate mold. You had Johnson, employee number one, this obsessive runner who wrote thousands of letters to customers. You had Woodell, a star athlete who, after an accident left him in a wheelchair, became the operational genius of the company. Hayes and Strasser were these overweight, chain-smoking accountants and lawyers. They were all outsiders. And this is what held them all together. Knight explains that every single one of them had been shaped by some kind of early failure or rejection.
They weren't just building a company. They were on a mission to prove the world wrong, and they were doing it together. That shared struggle, it was their greatest strength. By the late 1970s, Nike was a huge success. But with that success came their biggest challenges yet, including a fight with the US government that nearly, and I mean nearly, wiped them off the map. So one day, just out of the blue, a letter shows up from US Customs, and it has a bill for $25 million. Turns out it was based on this obscure, decades-old law that valued their shoes at their competitors' high retail prices, not their own low manufacturing cost. For a company that was constantly living on the edge of bankruptcy, this was a death sentence.
But they didn't fold. No way. They fought it. It was this brutal, multi-year battle that drained them of money and spirit. But winning that fight actually forced them to do the one thing they had resisted for years: secure their future for good by going public.
And so, after finally settling with the government for $9 million, Nike went public on December 2nd, 1980. The scrappy little startup that sold shoes out of a car trunk was finally safe. Knight and his original team, the Buttfaces, they were now all millionaires. The race was won. You know, Knight always said it was never really just about the business. For him, creating something, whether it was a better shoe or a whole company, was his way of connecting with humanity. It was about making a mark and, as he says, helping others live more fully. This was his real why.
The story of Nike, when you boil it all down, is really a story about the power of belief in the face of just overwhelming odds. It's a reminder that the path to anything great is rarely a straight line. So it kind of leaves us with one question to think about. What's your crazy idea, and what's stopping you from just not stopping?